I promise to pay when I grow up. Please, just water." For a moment the store stilled, heads turned toward the sound, like strings pulled by one hand. Near the bottled water display stood a little black girl no taller than the counter, her hair frizzed from the heat, her t-shirt several sizes too big and darkened with sweat. In her arms she clutched an empty plastic jug, cracked, battered, rinsed so many times it had turned cloudy. She wasn't stealing, she wasn't shouting, she simply held the jug out, both palms open as if presenting treasure, her voice trembling but polite. The clerk behind the counter blinked, then narrowed his eyes. His hand froze above the register keys. "Kid, this ain't charity. You got money or you don't." The girl swallowed, looking down at her dust-caked sandals. Around her the aisles seemed to close in. A man near the deli muttered, "Lord, in this heat." A woman balancing a basket shook her head, whispering louder than she realized, "Where's her mama?" The girl's lips trembled, but she didn't move. Instead she repeated herself, barely louder than before, "Just water. I'll pay when I grow up." The words hung heavy, absurd, and heartbreaking all at once. A teenager in line snorted, "What? She think this is a fairy tale?" His laughter sparked a ripple of uneasy chuckles that died as quickly as they started. The girl's small shoulders stiffened, but she didn't cry. She simply stood waiting, like someone who knew begging wasn't supposed to work but hoped anyway. The air conditioner coughed weakly overhead. A bead of sweat slid down her cheek and vanished into the collar of her shirt. Somewhere, a baby whimpered from a stroller, but the silence that followed belonged to her. To that plea, to a room full of adults suddenly reminded of thirst and shame and promises too big for children to carry. And in that silence, the question formed sharp as broken glass. Why is a little girl begging for water in public on the hottest day of the year? The sound of a shopping cart rolling to a halt cut through the uneasy silence. From the end of the aisle a tall man in a crisp navy suit paused, one hand still resting on the cart's handle. He had the look of someone who didn't belong here, at least not in this part of town. His polished shoes reflected the fluorescent lights, his watch glinted with every movement, and his face, shaded by salt and pepper stubble, was instantly recognizable to anyone who ever read the business section of the paper. Marcus Ellison, billionaire, investor, the kind of man whose name usually lived in headlines about skyscrapers and mergers, not grocery aisles and thirsty children. He had been halfway through the store distractedly checking his phone when the words reached him, "I promise to pay when I grow up." They stopped him cold, slicing through stock updates and endless meetings, pulling him backward in time to a memory he hadn't let himself feel in years. He turned now, eyes narrowing, locking onto the girl holding the empty jug. The clerk was already shooing her with a wave of his hand. "Go on, kid. You're blocking the line." Marcus's voice carried before he even realized he was speaking. "She's not blocking anyone." The cashier startled, his lips parting. Customers looked up, first at Marcus, then back at the girl, then at Marcus again. The recognition spread. A whisper floated near the magazine rack. "Isn't that the billionaire?" And suddenly the judgment shifted from the child to the man in the suit. Marcus walked slowly, deliberately, toward her. He wasn't the kind to rush, but there was something in the way she clutched that jug, something desperate, something honest, that demanded he close the space between them. When he stopped, he lowered himself to one knee, eye level with the girl. His tailored suit creased sharply against the linoleum. "What's your name?" His voice was steady, softened, but it carried a weight that made the nearby chatter die down again. The girl hesitated, then whispered, "Amara." Her eyes flicked toward the bottle of water behind the counter, then back to him. She didn't beg again. She didn't need to. Marcus studied her face, the dryness at her lips, the sweat plastering strands of hair to her forehead. 8 years old, maybe 9. Too young to be standing here alone with a jug in her hands, bargaining for survival. "You're not stealing anything," he said, louder now, for the clerk and everyone else to hear. She asked, and she asked politely. The clerk fumbled for words, then gave a nervous laugh. "Sir, you don't understand. I'll be the judge of what I understand. Marcus's tone cut clean, the kind that ended boardroom debates in a single breath. The room quieted again, this time in deference. Amara shifted, tightening her grip on the jug as if afraid it might vanish. She whispered, almost apologetically, "We ran out last night. My baby brother keeps crying. Mama says the pipes don't work no more. I just need water." A hush spread wider. Some averted their eyes. Some glanced at Marcus with curiosity, others with relief, as though they had been waiting for someone else to step forward so they wouldn't have to. And in that moment, standing between a billionaire with more power than he could ever spend, and a girl with nothing but hope in her voice, the store itself seemed to hold its breath, because Marcus Ellison had a choice: walk away, as he had so many times before, or kneel closer and say the words that might change everything. Marcus stayed crouched at eye level with Amara, ignoring the clerk's impatient shifting and the curious stares burning into his back. "Tell me, Amara," he said softly, "why are you here by yourself?" Her fingers tightened on the jug, knuckles whitening. She hesitated like a child deciding whether telling the truth might bring punishment. Finally, she whispered, "Because Mama's sick again. She sleeps a lot when it's hot. And Malik," she glanced down, as if picturing him, "he's just a baby. He cries when there's no water. So I came." The words were matter-of-fact, spoken without self-pity. They landed harder because of it. Marcus tilted his head. "No one came with you?" Amara shook her head. "I waited until Mama fell asleep. If she saw me leave, she'd get scared." Someone near the candy rack muttered, "Lord have mercy." A woman balancing her toddler on her hip whispered louder than she meant to, "That's the little one from Elm Street, building with the busted pipes." Another voice answered, "Didn't the city shut off water there last month? Unpaid bills." Whispers rippled through the store, filling the silence with fragments of rumor and judgment. Amara's chin dipped lower, shame pressing her small shoulders. Marcus glanced sharply at the onlookers. The murmurs died down like candles snuffed out. "Amara," Marcus said, drawing her attention back, "your brother, how old is he?" "1," she replied quickly, almost proudly. "His name's Malik. I make him laugh when he's sad, but he cries when it's hot. His lips get all white." Marcus's throat tightened, though his face remained composed. He had seen market crashes, corporate betrayals, billion-dollar losses. None of them hit like the picture of a baby's cracked lips in July heat. "Where's your father?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Her eyes flicked up at him, then down again. "Mama says he's not coming back. Police took him. I don't ask no more." The clerk shifted uncomfortably behind the counter, pretending to busy himself with receipts. The store was silent otherwise, every adult listening without daring to step closer. "And your mama?" Marcus asked gently. "She tries," Amara whispered. "She loves us, but sometimes her head gets loud, sometimes she don't talk, and when it's hot like this she just lays down." She paused and added in the smallest voice, "I think she forgets to eat." Marcus lowered his gaze, letting the weight of her words settle. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a meeting reminder, some boardroom waiting for his signature. He ignored it. "You walked here in this heat, with that jug?" Amara nodded. "It's heavy when it's full, but Malik needs it. Mama too." Something in the way she said need stripped the word bare of luxury. It wasn't want, it wasn't convenience. It was survival. Marcus stood slowly, his height drawing the attention of everyone in the store again. He turned toward the clerk. "Give her a case of water." The clerk stammered, "Sir, I can't just." Marcus's voice sharpened, honed by years of cutting through negotiations. "You can. And you will." The clerk swallowed hard, then reached for a case of bottled water, sliding it across the counter with trembling hands. Amara's eyes widened as if the clear plastic wrapping around those bottles was the most precious gift she had ever seen. She set her cracked jug on the counter gently, almost apologetically. Then, with both hands, she touched the case of water like it might vanish. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. But I swear I'll pay you back when I grow up. I mean it. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once, solemnly. I don't doubt you for a second. The crowd remained frozen, some shamed, some moved, watching a billionaire and a child stand together over the simplest, most essential thing on earth, water. And in that moment, Marcus Ellison realized the story wasn't about charity. It was about courage. Hers, not his. The clerk slid the case of water across the counter like it weighed a ton. His jaw was tight, his eyes darting between Marcus and the girl as if he'd been forced into something unnatural. Fine, he muttered. But next time she needs to bring money. Marcus's gaze hardened. Next time I'll remember your name. The words hung like a warning, and the clerk's shoulders sank under the weight of them. Still, he mumbled, kids like her always looking for a handout. That single phrase turned the air colder than the store's freezers. Amara's head dipped, her small hands tightening on the edge of the water case as though trying to shield herself from the invisible blows. Marcus leaned closer to the clerk. His voice dropped low enough that only the counter could hear. She asked for water, not pity. And you should be grateful she still has the dignity to ask instead of take. The clerk looked away, but the judgment wasn't his alone. Whispers stirred again across the aisles. A middle-aged man muttered, bet her mom's off somewhere wasting money. Another woman whispered, city's full of scams these days. Amara heard them. Marcus saw it in the way her shoulders stiffened. She kept her eyes down, but shame flickered across her face like a storm she had no umbrella for. Before Marcus could speak again, a voice from the back cut through the murmur. Excuse me, a tall woman in a khaki vest said, stepping forward. A badge clipped to her chest gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Child Protective Services. She had been in line unnoticed until now, but her expression carried the weight of official suspicion. This your child? She asked Marcus sharply. Marcus blinked. No, she's not mine. The woman's gaze flicked down at Amara, then back up at him. Then you should let me handle this. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, some nodding as if relieved someone official had stepped in. Amara froze, her small voice cracked. Please no, Mama says don't let them take me. The please sliced Marcus clean. He crouched again, putting himself between Amara and the woman's advancing steps. She came here for water, he said firmly. Not for judgment, not for separation. The CPS worker narrowed her eyes. Sir, with respect, you don't know the conditions she's living in. Marcus's voice carried now, steady and commanding. I don't need to know everything to recognize courage. She walked here with an empty jug while grown adults averted their eyes. He turned, deliberately sweeping his gaze across the store. Tell me, how many of you would do that at her age? Silence. Not one head lifted, not one person answered. The CPS worker's lips pressed into a thin line. If she's in danger, she needs intervention. Intervention? Marcus echoed. Or removal. You call it protection. But to a child, it feels like punishment. She asked for water. That's all. Amara's eyes brimmed, but no tears fell. She clutched the jug tighter, like a soldier holding on to the last piece of armor. The CPS worker exhaled sharply, then stepped back. I'll make a note of this, she said coldly, retreating toward the door. But this isn't over. When she left, the whispers returned, softer this time, filled with unease. Marcus stood, took the case of water in one arm as though it weighed nothing, and with his free hand gestured for Amara to follow. Come with me, he said quietly. Her small feet shuffled to keep up as they stepped out of the store together. Outside, the sun slammed down like an anvil. The asphalt radiated heat in waves, distorting the parked cars into wavy mirages. Marcus felt the sweat bead instantly on his brow, but Amara only hugged the jug to her chest, face red and lips cracked. Where do you live? Marcus asked as they crossed the lot. Her voice was barely audible over the roar of passing traffic. Down on Elm. The old brick building with boards on the windows. Pipes don't work no more. Sometimes we get water from the hydrant, but cops yell if they see us. He slowed, absorbing the image. A child risking police wrath just for water. Amara hesitated, then added softly, "Sometimes Mama says it's better to go thirsty than be taken away. But Malik cries too loud. He don't understand thirsty." The words hit harder than any corporate negotiation Marcus had ever endured. He placed the water carefully in the trunk of his sleek black car, then crouched again so she had to meet his eyes. "Amara," he said, "today we're not just taking water, we're getting more than that." She blinked at him, uncertain. "Like what?" "Whatever you and your family need." Her brow furrowed. "That's too much." Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, too much is letting a child beg strangers while the world stares. Too much is silence." She bit her lip, torn between hope and disbelief. Finally she nodded, whispering, "Okay." As Marcus opened the car door for her, people from the store window watched. Some whispered again, others simply stared. But in that parking lot, under a sun hot enough to blister the pavement, one truth became undeniable. This wasn't about charity anymore. This was a battle against a world that had forced a child to beg for life's simplest gift, water, and Marcus Ellison wasn't about to lose. The car's leather seats groaned as Amara slid in, her small legs dangling just short of the floor mats. She set the battered jug on her lap like it was a crown jewel. For a long moment she said nothing, just stared out the window as Marcus settled into the driver's seat. The hum of the engine filled the silence. Marcus glanced sideways, studying her reflection in the glass. She sat too still for a child her age, shoulders squared, lips pressed, as though carrying the weight of something no 8-year-old should. "You remind me of someone," he said finally. Her eyes flicked toward him, cautious. "Who?" "My daughter," Marcus answered. His voice softened, the words catching at the edges. "She was about your age when she used to sit in this seat. She'd hum songs she made up, out of tune but always cheerful." Amara tilted her head. "Where is she now?" The question landed like a stone in Marcus's chest. He gripped the steering wheel tighter before answering. "She passed away." "Oh." Amara looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry." Marcus cleared his throat, blinking against a sting he hadn't felt in years. "Thank you." Silence returned, but it wasn't as heavy. It was gentler, filled with the quiet understanding of two souls who knew loss. After a few blocks, Amara asked, "Why'd you help me?" "People don't usually stop." Marcus let out a breath. "Because you asked with dignity. And because no child should ever have to promise to pay when they grow up just to drink water." She considered that, then whispered, "Most people look away. I didn't." "No," she agreed softly. "You didn't." At the red light, Marcus pulled a folded silk handkerchief from his breast pocket, navy blue with fine white stitching. He had carried it for years, more habit than need. He held it out to her. "Here, for Malik. A little something to keep him cool until we get more." Amara hesitated, staring at the elegant square of fabric. "It's too nice. I'll ruin it. Then it will finally have a purpose," Marcus said with a small smile. She accepted it carefully, holding it like treasure. "Thank you." Her voice wavered, but her eyes shone. She folded the handkerchief neatly, pressing it against her cheek as if to test its softness, then tucked it back onto her lap. When they reached the corner of Elm Street, Marcus slowed. The brick building loomed ahead, windows boarded, paint peeling. The air around it seemed heavier, as though even the sun avoided this block. "That's home?" he asked gently. Amara nodded. "Mama says it's just for now, but we've been there a long time." They parked at the curb. Amara slid out, balancing the jug against her chest with both arms. Marcus carried the case of water, his polished shoes crunching over broken glass scattered on the sidewalk. Inside the entryway, the air was stifling, thicker than outside. A single fan buzzed weakly in the hall, doing little more than stir the hot air. Amara led him toward the stairs, pausing at each step to steady the jug. At the top floor she stopped at a door with peeling paint and whispered, "This is us." Before she could knock, the faint sound of a baby's cry reached them. Amara smiled faintly, relief flooding her face. "That's Malik." She hurried inside, placing the jug down with care before rushing to the crib. A baby boy no older than 1 reached toward her, his cheeks flushed from the heat. Amara lifted him gently, pressing Marcus's handkerchief against his forehead. Malik quieted, cooing softly. Marcus stood in the doorway watching. For the first time all day he saw the child's shoulders relax. She wasn't the stoic little soldier anymore. She was just a big sister, humming off-key to soothe her brother. "See," she said, looking back at Marcus. "He likes it." Marcus smiled, a rare genuine curve of his lips. "Of course he does. It was meant for him." And in that dim, overheated apartment, surrounded by peeling paint and broken promises, a fragile bond took root. One woven not of charity, but of shared humanity. The next morning, Marcus rose earlier than usual. The heat wave hadn't broken overnight. The city's skyline shimmered beneath a haze already promising another brutal day. But his mind wasn't on board meetings or stock updates. It was on Amara's cracked jug, her trembling voice, and the baby's flushed cheeks. He had arranged a delivery, more water, groceries, even a small generator to power a fan, but something in his chest told him to go in person. When he turned down Elm Street, the block was as weary as ever. Curtains sagging, broken bikes rusting on stoops, stray cats darting for shade. But when he climbed the narrow stairwell to Amara's door, an unfamiliar stillness greeted him. The apartment door was ajar. Marcus pushed it gently. Inside, the room was stripped of sound. No soft hum of Amara's off-key song, no baby's cry, no shuffle of tired footsteps, just silence. The jug he had seen her clutch was toppled on its side near the sink, still damp on the inside. A few bottles from the case of water remained on the counter, unopened. On the floor near the crib lay his navy handkerchief, the one Amara had folded so carefully. Now it was crumpled, as though dropped in a hurry. Marcus's pulse quickened. "Amara," he called softly. His voice echoed against bare walls. "Malik, Sarah," no answer. He stepped farther in, scanning the room. The mattress where the mother had rested was stripped, blankets gone. A drawer hung open, its contents emptied. Everything about the space screamed flight. Marcus stooped, picking up the handkerchief. He smoothed it against his palm, his jaw tightening. He had seen this kind of exit before, not in homes but in boardrooms and negotiations where people disappeared overnight to escape debts, threats, or dangers too heavy to confront. But this was different. This was a family. Children, a mother barely hanging on. As he stood in the empty room, questions pressed in on him. Had someone forced them out? Had the CPS worker returned with authority? Or had Sarah, overwhelmed, frightened, decided to run before help could reach them? Through the open window, a breeze carried the sound of sirens from blocks away. The city moved on, indifferent. But Marcus remained frozen in that abandoned apartment, holding the crumpled fabric like evidence of a bond now severed. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. And in that powerlessness, a new resolve began to harden. He would find them. Because Amara's promise, "I'll pay you back when I grow up," wasn't just about water. It was a lifeline, a vow, and vows weren't meant to be abandoned. Marcus didn't waste time. He started asking questions. The grocer, the kids loitering near the corner store, the old man in a rocking chair who never seemed to leave his stoop. Most gave only shrugs or wary looks. People in neighborhoods like this learned early not to get involved. But finally, one boy, maybe 13, kicked at a broken bottle and muttered, "They don't stay put long." Not with him around. Marcus crouched. With who around? The boy's eyes darted to the brick building across the street. Its top windows were covered in tin, graffiti curling up the sides. "Mr. D." The words came out flat, like a curse. "Mr. D." Marcus pressed. The boy swallowed hard. "The landlord. Some say he owns the block. Makes folks pay for everything. Electric, water, even the locks on their doors. If they can't pay, he takes things. Or worse." Marcus's stomach sank. Slumlord. He'd read about such men in reports, but seeing the fear in a child's eyes turned statistics into flesh. That evening, Marcus returned to Elm Street. He waited near the corner until he saw movement. Sarah, Amara's mother, hustling down the sidewalk with Malik strapped to her chest, and Amara clutching her hand. She looked thinner than before, eyes darting like a hunted animal. "Sarah," Marcus called gently. She froze, spinning, pulling Amara closer behind her. "What are you doing here?" "I came back. The apartment was empty. I was worried." Her voice sharpened. "You shouldn't have. You don't understand." Marcus stepped closer, careful not to spook her. "Then help me understand." Before she could answer, a shadow fell across the cracked pavement. A tall man emerged from the alley, his bulk filling the space like a wall. His shirt clung to sweat-soaked skin, gold chain glinting against his chest. His eyes, cold and predatory, locked onto Sarah. "Well, well," he drawled. "Didn't I tell you, sweetheart? You can't just run off. You owe me." Sarah stiffened. "We don't owe you anything, Darnell." Marcus felt Amara's small fingers grip his coat sleeve, her whole body trembling. The man, Darnell, smirked. "Pipes don't work because I turned them off. You want water, you pay. You want shelter, you pay. Ain't no free rides here." His gaze slid to Marcus, narrowing with recognition. "And who's this? Prince Charming in a suit." Marcus didn't flinch. "Her friend." Darnell barked a laugh, sharp and humorless. "Friend? Rich folks don't come to Elm unless they're slumming for a story." He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing Sarah and Amara. "So unless you're here to cover her debts, I suggest you walk away." Sarah's voice cracked. "We don't owe you. You made me pay twice last month. I have nothing left." Darnell's smile turned cruel. "Then I'll take what I want another way." His hand twitched towards Sarah's arm. Marcus moved, placing himself between them in one swift motion. "Touch her," he said evenly, "and you'll answer to me." The street hushed. Even the usual background noise, the bark of dogs, the blare of music, seemed to fade. Darnell tilted his head, sizing him up. Then he leaned close, his breath hot with menace. "Money don't mean a thing out here, billionaire. Out here, power is what you can hold in your fists." Marcus met his stare without blinking. "Then you've already lost." For a beat, no one moved. Then a car door slammed down the street, shattering the tension. Darnell stepped back, lips curling. "This ain't over," he muttered, pointing a thick finger at Sarah. "You run again, and I'll find you." He disappeared into the shadows, but the threat lingered in the air like smoke. Sarah sagged, tears streaking her cheeks. Amara pressed against Marcus, still shaking, and in that moment, Marcus knew this wasn't about water anymore. It wasn't about charity. It was a fight against a predator who thrived on fear. And predators didn't stop unless someone stronger stood in their way. 2 days later, Marcus arranged to meet Sarah and the children at the community center near MacArthur Park. He'd promised safety, a roof, and legal help. But as he waited by the shaded benches, unease gnawed at him. Because men like Darnell never let go. Sure enough, the crowd gathering outside the center began to murmur. A black SUV pulled up, its music rattling windows, its doors opening like jaws. Darnell stepped out, 2 men trailing behind him. The sun caught his chain, his grin flashing sharp as a blade. "Thought you could hide, huh?" he called, voice booming across the courtyard. "Dragging strangers into business that don't concern them." Sarah froze. Amara's hand slipped into Marcus's, trembling. Malik whimpered against his mother's chest. Marcus stood slowly, straightening his suit jacket, his presence commanding the attention of everyone nearby. "This ends today." Darnell laughed, a sound without joy. "You think because you got money you can waltz in here and tell me what ends? Out here, your money don't matter." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "No, but community does." He raised his voice, turning to the onlookers, the mothers with strollers, the teens on bikes, the old men hunched on benches. "How many of you have been cheated? Had your water cut off? Paid twice for the same roof over your heads?" The murmurs grew louder. A woman called out, "He took my check last month." Another shouted, "He shut off our lights." Voices rose, a chorus of pent-up frustration. Darnell's smirk faltered. "Shut up," he barked, spinning toward them. "You all owe me. You breathe on this block because I allow it." That was his mistake. Marcus stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "No, you don't own them. You exploit them." Darnell's fists clenched. "One more word, and you'll what?" Marcus interrupted, his voice cutting sharp. "Hit a mother carrying her baby. Strike a child asking for water. Do it here in front of every witness, every camera." Indeed, phones were rising, lenses catching the confrontation. The crowd, once silent, was now emboldened. Shouts rang out, "Stand up to him. We're not afraid anymore." Sarah's chest heaved. For the first time in years, she stepped forward, her voice trembling but fierce. "You don't get to scare us anymore, Darnell. You took enough from me, from my children." Darnell blinked, caught off guard by her defiance. Then Amara's small voice rose, steady and piercing. "We just wanted water." The courtyard stilled. Simple words, but they carried more power than any threat. Darnell snarled, but the ground was shifting beneath him. The police, tipped off by Marcus's call earlier, arrived at that moment, lights flashing. Officers stepped between the crowd and Darnell, their radios crackling. Marcus didn't gloat. He simply placed a hand on Amara's shoulder, grounding her. "It's over," he murmured. The officers moved in, cuffing Darnell as he spat curses, his bravado collapsing into rage. The crowd erupted, cheers, tears, relief pouring out after years of silence. Neighbors who once whispered now shouted, their fear replaced with solidarity. Sarah sank onto a bench, Malik nestled against her chest, tears streaming freely. Amara climbed into her lap, clinging tight. Marcus stood nearby, watching the family wrapped together, stronger now than before. He had money, yes, influence, yes, but at that moment, it wasn't wealth that mattered. It was the courage of a mother, the innocence of a child, and the voices of a community that finally refused to be quiet. Darnell was led away, his empire of intimidation crumbling with every step, and in the middle of the courtyard, Amara leaned against Marcus, whispering the same words she had spoken in the grocery store, but this time with hope, not desperation. "I'll pay you back when I grow up." Marcus smiled faintly, his eyes stinging. "You already have, Amara, you already have." The courtyard slowly emptied, neighbors dispersing in clusters, their voices alive with something that hadn't existed here in years, possibility. The echo of handcuffs snapping shut still hung in the air, but for Sarah and her children, the silence left behind felt like a new beginning. Marcus walked them back into the community center. Inside, the air conditioning hummed softly, a welcome change from the sweltering streets. Volunteers handed Sarah a cold drink, offered Malik a small toy, and guided them toward a quiet room. For the first time in a long time, Sarah let herself sit without fear. Amara perched beside her, still clutching Marcus's handkerchief. She had smoothed the wrinkles, folded it neatly again, and pressed it against Malik's cheek like a charm. Marcus knelt beside them, lowering his voice. "You don't have to run anymore. I'll make sure you're safe. Not just tonight, but tomorrow, and the day after." Sarah looked at him, exhaustion etched deep in her face. "Why?" she whispered. "Why us? You don't even know us." Marcus hesitated. The old part of him, the businessman, the pragmatist, wanted to answer with logic, but the truth was simpler, heavier, and more vulnerable than any boardroom speech. "Because someone should have done it for my daughter," he said quietly. "And I can't go back, but I can go forward, with you." Tears filled Sarah's eyes, but this time they weren't only from pain, they were from release. She nodded, her voice breaking. "Thank you." Across the room, Amara pulled a scrap of paper from a volunteer's desk and a crayon from a box. She bent low, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Minutes later she held up her drawing, 3 figures standing together beneath a bright blue sky, a faucet pouring water into a glass between them. Above, in bold uneven letters, she had written one word: hum. Marcus's breath caught. He took the drawing as though it were priceless. "It's beautiful," he murmured. Amara beamed, her eyes lighting up in a way that made her look every bit the child she was supposed to be, not weighed down, not ashamed, just hopeful. Later, as the sun dipped and the city cooled, Marcus walked out of the center with Sarah and her children. The block looked the same, cracked sidewalks, boarded windows, but something in the air felt changed. Neighbors waved, children played louder. A collective exhale had been released. At the curb, Marcus crouched again so he was eye level with Amara. "You kept your promise," he said softly. She frowned. "But I didn't pay you back yet." He smiled, shaking his head. "Amara, you paid me back the moment you reminded me what courage looks like. And that's worth more than money." Her face glowed with quiet pride. Sarah placed a hand on Marcus's arm. "Steady but firm. We'll build from here. We'll heal. You've done enough." He nodded. "Then I'll be here if you need me. Always." As they turned down the street together, the baby babbling, Amara skipping just slightly now, the world seemed to bend toward hope. The fight wasn't over, not against poverty, not against injustice, but for one family. The cycle had cracked, and sometimes Marcus thought that was how change began. One promise, one act of courage, one glass of water at a time. The city lights flickered on as dusk settled, but in one corner of Elm Street the darkness felt a little less heavy. A little girl had asked for water, and instead, she gave an entire neighborhood courage. Sometimes, change doesn't roar. Sometimes, it whispers from the smallest voice in the room saying, "I promise to pay when I grow up." That promise wasn't about money. It was about dignity, about hope, about believing the future can be different, even when the present feels impossible. And maybe that's what shocked the crowd most of all, not the billionaire's response, but the reminder that kindness, real, fearless kindness, is still possible. If this story touched you, share it. Tell someone today that their courage matters. Remind them that no child should ever beg for water, or food, or love. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you heard Amara's whisper in that store? And if your heart was moved, don't just watch, be part of this community. Like, subscribe, and let's keep telling stories that prove even in the hardest places, hope can rise. Because sometimes, the greatest wealth isn't found in bank accounts or skyscrapers. It's found in keeping a promise, one glass of water at a time.